or less than 5 days to do it. We're ready. Never show.
I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:09. Can I have a moment of silence, please? Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Mr. Kenny?
Here.
Ms. Blystein? Mr. Bromhall?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Ms. Iacone?
Here.
Mr. Meeker?
Here.
Ms. Topps?
Here.
Ms. Trompe? Ms. Fitzwater here. Statement is hereby made that adequate notice of this meeting was given by submission of said notice to the Burlington County Times, Courier Times, Cinnaminson Township Clerk, and the district website on the following dates: March 3rd, 2023, March 28th, 2023, January 17th, 2024, March 14th, 2024, and April 11th, 2024. Good evening to everybody, and we will have opening remarks by Mr. Capello.
Yes, thank you. Actually, we are going to transition over to the podium, so if you just give me a second, I'm going to invite Mrs. Livingood over to join me at the podium. We're going to begin with our budget presentation, so pause for just 1 second. All right. And now I'm at this microphone. Thank you to members of the board, members of the public, and anyone watching along at home for being here at our public hearing on the 2024-2025 budgets. While this process will happen by way of statutorily required public meeting this evening, lest anyone think that this has not been a very long process to get to this point. Mrs. Livingood's office begins developing the budget back early in the fall. Our board and our finance committee have reviewed the materials that we'll discuss this evening a number of times, and I look forward to sharing what our prospects look like for the upcoming school year and the budget. So, as I mentioned, this is our public hearing on the proposed 24-25 district budget. Where we typically begin with our public hearing on the budget is reaffirmation of our district's mission statement. I will not read it here, but it is available on our district's website. And the reason we get back to our mission is that everything that is in our mission statement, everything that is in our schools, everything that is in our curriculum gets back to our core mission. And everything that we are proposing tonight is in line with this mission. In addition to the mission statement, also statutorily required, and part of the CUSAC process, the district must develop budget objectives. And these budget objectives are broken down for this year into 4 areas. Again, I don't mean to read off of slides, but as members of the public and the board can see, we are always looking to create efficiencies within our budget and provide a quality education for our students. And I think you'll be pleased that this program, or that this budget will commit to continuing on with all of our personnel and programs from prior budgets. So in making this budget, we also look to assess the financial needs of the district. Everything that we do comes down to dollars and cents, to money to run our personnel, transportation, support our curriculum, the extracurriculars. Everything comes down to what is a want and what is a need. And when we're developing and going through the budget process, we have to consider that. So that will be discussed this evening. We're very proud of our curriculum in meeting the needs of the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. Dr. Goldburn and his curriculum team have done an excellent job ensuring that we are compliant by all areas of the CUSAC review process, and that our students have access to a quality education that begins with a curriculum that meets all of the state standards. Another area that has been important for this board for many number of years is our target class sizes. We realize that this has become a challenge in recent years given the substantial growth that we've seen as a school district to the tune of about 20% student population growth. It has certainly become a challenge for us to be able to maintain class sizes that we feel comfortable with, particularly at our lower grades. But I applaud this board in being committed to maintaining these class sizes. And what that has meant for the last few years is additional sections, particularly at the New Albany School and the Rush School. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like moving on to the next school year. So we continue on with our budget objectives. Again, I don't want to read directly from the slides, but these budgets need to be able to provide training for our Board of Education, administrative, teaching staff, and support staff. And throughout the course of the year, our staff have access to various professional learning opportunities and professional development, and most of them take place in the course of our 6 provided professional learning days for staff. We'll hear about some of the technology that's supported in the budget. Obviously, in this post-COVID era, we've channeled even more money into supporting more learning via technology and technology infusion into the classroom. We also talk a lot about transportation in our budget. Transportation costs have gone up, and we're very proud that we maintain all of our buses. We have in-house transportation, and our budget continues to support that. We're also a point of pride for our district is our facilities, and we'll learn about some upkeep in our facilities for the upcoming school year, but this board has been very good about reinvesting in the publicly funded school district schools and our physical plants, so that will continue in the 24-25 budget. And then, of course, safety and security. We are continually looking to secure the physical plant that is our school and our buildings and harden our entrances, security cameras, secure vestibules, all of the things that point to making our schools safer for our students and for our staff remain a top commitment in this budget as well. So talk a little, kind of from like the 30,000-foot overview of where we're hitting in this budget, some of the highlights, and then Mrs. Livingood will talk about the dollars and cents items. So as I already mentioned before, programming is a key part of any budget. I know some of our colleagues throughout New Jersey and even in Burlington County cannot share the same information. That we're very proud that we're able to maintain all of our personnel and all of our programs. That's not only our educational programs, which we're actually looking to expand a little bit, but also all of our extracurricular activities as well. So specifically in terms of adding to and augmenting our already existing programs, we're looking to add some new science electives to Cinnaminson High School. As we talked about in public and at board meetings in the past, we are adding to our pre-K population, and we've got some exciting plans for the upcoming school year to continue to augment on our journey in a 5-year plan of looking to offering full day free pre-K to all students in the Cinnaminson Public Schools universe. So definitely more to come on that. And we have some new extracurricular programs in the arts that we're looking to also add to our student program. In terms of staffing, this has definitely been a big point of impact for the Cinnaminson School District. As our student population has grown, as you might imagine, our staffing has grown. I keep at these presentations thinking we are approaching a plateau in our student population, and our rate of growth has definitely slowed, but we do continue to grow. And I am hoping that as the pockets of students continue to move, from New Albany School working their way up to the high school, that we're also leveling out with staff. Our numbers do project that maybe next year there'll be a little bit of staff addition, but I think we are starting to wane away from needing to add to staff. But for next year, we have additions in kindergarten and first and second grade. And again, this is just to address class size issues, right? We talked about what the board's class size objectives and expectations are. Those class sizes have gotten a little higher in the last couple of years than we're comfortable with. That is also obviously impacted by the amount of space that we have for those students to learn in. I would love it if we could just keep adding staff and making class sizes smaller, but also factored into that consideration is the classroom space for them to learn. And I've used the term here in public before. We have some square footage challenges, and we're also looking to address them in this budget as well. At the Rush School, we are looking to add a special education teacher, and a number of these additions are compelled by ratios that we need to maintain to be compliant with our special education population. And as that growth moves up into the middle school and high school, it's not quite as easy when you're addressing class size in the middle school and high school because the students aren't in the same homeroom every day, so it's not just a divide by n situation. So we sometimes look at this over the course of many years and look at where our highest need is. And at the middle school, some of our class sizes are starting to creep beyond those budget objective expectations. So we are looking to add a social studies teacher to the middle school for next year. And at the high school, that same principle applied, looking at the classes where our class size is starting to get north of where we're comfortable, and looking at the population coming from the middle school to the high school, it looks like class sizes will only increase. So we'll be looking to address that with a math teacher, and in order to save a little bit of funds for a health and physical education teacher, we're looking to do that as a part-time position. And then we mentioned some growth and expansion in pre-K. While we might not be hiring staff for next year, we're going to hire that staff this year. We are going to need to augment our support staff for the pre-K rooms as well. So again, more to come on pre-K over the course of the next few years, but we are excited that that program is growing, and so is the staff. In terms of technology, this is Mr. Creel's area, and I'll apologize for reading off of the slides, but as we add some new learning spaces to the district for next year, they will need to be supported by new technology. We're doing some bell system upgrades. In addition to being a health and human services issue, this is definitely a school safety issue. We have some aging bell systems in some of our older schools, and our communications is critical, particularly when you're talking about real-time threats. So we're very excited to be able to address some of those needs. Every year, we make an investment into expanding our security camera access, and since we're looking at adding some new learning spaces, those spaces will need to be augmented with some security camera expansion as well. And then we are a district that has a one-to-one Chromebook initiative for all students grades 3 and up. So as a part of that, so that we don't wind up with aging devices, we have a commitment to refreshing those Chromebooks a little bit at a time every year, similar to like our transportation bus replenishment cycle. I'm actually going to skip right over to transportation because that's the shorter one. As board members know, school buses have a lifespan. Used to be 10 years. Now we can push them up to 15 years. So we do need to continually replace some of our buses. For next year, we're looking at a new 16-passenger bus and then a 25 and a 40-passenger bus, each with a lift for accessibility access. So in the past, we've maybe purchased 4 or 5 buses. Next year, doing a needs assessment, it looks like we are only in need of 3. As board members are aware, the costs of school buses have gone up dramatically, like everything else. So we try to, only purchase what we need, even as our population has grown, and we do need to replace buses that hit that 15-year age cycle. We're comfortable going into next school year with these 3 buses that are listed here. In terms of our facilities, I've said it before, I'll say it again, this board has been excellent about reinvesting in our existing facilities. We invested, the community supported us in 2014 to do a referendum project, but those are not one-off projects, right? If you don't maintain the new facilities, then you can see what you see on the news all the time of schools falling into disrepair, and this board has been very clear that that's not to happen here in Cinnaminson. A big part of that, and fortunately we're able to do a lot of this work in-house, as we'll see in the next slide. We'll be doing phase 1 classroom renovations at the Rush School. We're tackling 4 classrooms this summer when we do those. That's new floor tile, new ceiling tiles, new light fixtures, new paint, technology upgrades, and just creating a better, brighter learning space for all of our students. And by doing them a few classrooms at a time, we were actually able to renovate the entire New Albany School with the exception of 2 classrooms in a process that began 7 years ago. So we have 2 minor upgrades to finish the New Albany School, and all of those classrooms will have been refreshed. We're also looking to augment our learning spaces with some additional learning cottages to address our square footage issues. That's at the New Albany School and the Rush School. And then at the existing learning college facility, looking to build a canopy at Rush. And again, fortunately, we have some skilled laborers in our district who are able to do these projects in-house. So there is significant savings when our folks are able to do the construction projects. We had some proof of concept this year when we added new canopies in the front of Learning Cottage 1 at Rush School, and we'll look to continue that with the additional learning cottages at Rush School as well. We talked about some pre-K classroom space. We've talked a lot about pre-K and budgeting the last few years. We had a 3-phase pre-K project at the Memorial School. We had to take down some walls to make pre-K accessible classrooms. Again, the Department of Education really prefers our pre-K classroom space be around 950 square feet. Those are large learning instruction areas, and we don't have too many of them in the district. So as we look to expand our pre-K, it's not helping our square footage situation, but fortunately, again, with the skilled labor that we have access to on our maintenance team, we're able to take existing classrooms and upgrade them to be pre-K compliant. A little smaller projects along the way too, safety focused as well. We need to do some restriping of our parking lots. We'll be renovating the culinary classroom here at the middle school. Again, in-house labor will be doing that this summer. We have some fire doors that need to be replaced here at Cinnaminson Middle School, and that's one of those requirements for health and student safety. We're looking to refinish the gym floors at the high school and the middle school. We need to replace some sidewalk, again, another safety issue at the high school. And we're also looking to do a little bit of work with some very crowded fields there and provide a little bit better extracurricular space for our students who are on campus at the high school by installing a well and adding some irrigation so that we can use some fields that are not necessarily in a condition to be athletic or marching band fields right now, but with a small investment into some irrigation, we'll be able to get a little bit more use out of stuff that is on campus at the high school. We're also looking to begin a smaller project replacing some windows at the Memorial School. As you can imagine, replacing all of the windows in a school would be an enormous investment. The cost of materials on windows upgrades has gotten significant, but if we don't make a commitment to do it at least a little bit at a time, the problem will only continue to grow exponentially. So we're looking to just, in some of the more problematic areas, address some window replacements this year. And then, of course, we always budget for some emergent needs, tree work, cement work, and HVAC, which this board knows has been a challenge for this board over the last couple of years. I did mention that we do a lot of the work ourselves in-house. So what you're looking at on the two images to the left, you're seeing a classroom being renovated. So you're seeing new ceiling tile grid being installed by our team after paint jobs are done in the classrooms. And then that bottom picture there shows us tearing down a wall to build a larger instructional space from the Memorial School. So 1950s classrooms being updated to come up to spec in the 2020s. And then the two pictures on the right, you see the end results of what our classrooms look like with brand new floors, brand new paint, LED light fixtures. They're bright, wonderful spaces for our kids to learn in. And again, we're able to accomplish those in-house. So. Coming up next, I'm going to invite Mrs. Livingood to join me, and she is going to talk a little bit about the budget process and get into the dollars and cents. Members of the board will have an opportunity to ask some questions at the end, so if you have questions about what I've just talked about, kind of hold them till the end, and members of the public will also have an opportunity to talk as well. So, Mrs. Livingood.
Good evening. Some key budget facts to take note of. The total proposed budget for the 24-25 school year is $70,336,270. This amount is a combination of the general fund, special revenue fund, and debt service. The general fund is the primary operating budget, and it's used for salaries, benefits, supplies, student support services, textbooks, maintenance and operations, transportation, tuition, security, capital projects, and all other expenses that are deemed necessary to the district. Special revenue is made up of only grant funds. This budget of $1,468,223 is a projection based on a percentage of the current grant allocations, which we know we are eligible for next year. This projection also includes the actual grant allocation for the preschool expansion program. These numbers are subject to change and will most likely increase once we receive our actual allocation, which is in the summer prior to the start of the school year. The debt service fund is the annual payment that's owed for the financing for the 2014 bond referendum. The debt balance as of June 30th, 2024 is $36,438,750. The debt will be paid off as of August 1st, 2039. State aid is increasing by $1,747,655. The proposed tax levy increase for the general fund is 2.48%, which is equal to $868,655. The proposed tax levy will result in an approximate increase of $99 per year for the average assessed home in Cinnaminson, which is $235,668. The proposed budget maintains all existing personnel and programs that are in this year's current budget. State aid comparison. Here we see our current year state aid versus the 24-25 state aid. We receive equalization aid, categorical special education aid, categorical security aid, transportation aid, and debt service aid. The total state aid for the general fund is $21,096,944, and the debt service aid is $672,473. Cinnaminson is gaining an additional $1.7 million, which is an increase of 9%. Equalization is the primary aid that a school district receives. The increase in equalization aid is determined by the calculation of the district's adequacy budget. It's a weighted value based upon enrollment. This year, the calculation is stating that we should receive $13,946 per pupil for regular education and $21,868 per pupil for special education. It's mandated that we are entitled to receive funds for providing a thorough and efficient education process for every child. There is a state aid differential which affects equalization aid, and it's determined that Cinnaminson should have received larger allocations in the past. This is why we've received additional funding over the past few years. Last year, we actually received $3.9 million in state aid, while we are still receiving an increase. This year, the increase is about half of what we received last year, so it's not quite as high. The debt service aid is a percentage of the debt payment owed for the 2014 bond referendum, and the district qualifies for $791,145. However, the state continues to fund only 85% of that, which is why we are receiving the $672,473. When building a budget, first we must determine the total revenue that the district will generate. Once the revenue is determined, then we know how much we'll be able to spend. This slide shows what makes up our revenue for the 24-25 school year. The local tax levy is increasing by 2.48%. A district is allowed to raise the tax levy to 2%, which is the cap. Beyond the 2% limit, a district may be entitled to additional adjustments. The bank cap is an adjustment that generates when a school district doesn't raise to the 2% tax levy. Over the past 3 years, Cinnaminson has generated bank's cap. We've went to 1.1% increase, a 1% increase, and a 1.9% increase. When bank cap is generated by not raising the tax levy by 2%, the district then has 3 years to apply those funds. This year, Cinnaminson had $3,021,567 of bank cap. Of that total, $313,289, which was generated in the 21-22 school year, is expiring. We are not using any bank cap funds for the 24-25 school year. We do have an enrollment adjustment, which we are using in the amount of $118,330. This adjustment number is based on a projected enrollment increase, which is calculated and given to us by the state of New Jersey. We also have a healthcare cost adjustment of $65,957. Of that, we're using $52,182. Any excess adjustment funds that we're not using will roll into our bank cap. Miscellaneous revenue is made up of tuition payments received, transportation jointures with other district, Medicaid reimbursements, E-rate reimbursements, interest earned, and any other miscellaneous payments that we receive throughout the school year. This is projected to increase by $33,000 due to projected increases in tuition and our transportation jointures. State aid is increasing by a total of $2.2 million. We reviewed the $1.7 million increase on the last slide. The additional $450,000 in our revenue increase is due to our projected extraordinary aid. School districts are able to submit costs associated with students that have significant needs. The aid calculation is done by the state of New Jersey and is generally a percentage of our total submission. The use of fund balance is increasing from $4.6 million to $4.8 million. This amount of fund balance is required to be used and is determined by the appropriation of excess surplus, which we reviewed in our audit report, and it's automatically added in our budget software. Capital reserve and maintenance reserve withdrawal. These funds that are taken from our reserve accounts are being allocated to facility projects and required maintenance. In the current school year, we've used these funds for the renovation of classrooms at the New Albany School and the Memorial School, and any other required maintenance that we've had throughout the district. Funds for the 24-25 school year are allocated from maintenance reserve for the renovation of classrooms, support for the learning cottages, facility upgrades and repairs, and all other required maintenance throughout the district. As you can see, as of now, there is no funds that are allocated to be used for capital reserve. And this is because the projects in question have to be approved to be part of our long-range facility plan, which we have submitted. Once we receive that approval by the DOE, a resolution will be presented to the board to approve a capital reserve withdrawal at that time. Prior year encumbrances are rolled purchase orders that go from 1 year to the next. In the 23-24 column, you see the open purchase orders that rolled from the 22-23 school year. The $0 in the 24-25 school year will change based on the June 30th, 2024 open purchase orders. And our total budget comes to $70,336,270. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Here's a revenue chart which shows the percentage breakdowns of all of our revenue that I just discussed. As you can see, tax levy and state aid make up the majority of all of our district funding. This next slide shows the appropriation of funds, which is how the money will be spent for the 24-25 school year. Salaries and instruction will increase due to salary increases, which result from negotiated contracts and the addition of new positions. Co-curricular activities and athletics will increase due to salary increases and supplies. Support services are made up of social work, attendance, nursing services, related services, child study team, curriculum, and media services for students. This is increasing due to salaries and individual student needs. Administration and technology services include all administrative costs and also supports our one-to-one technology initiative. Operations and maintenance will increase by 6%. This is due to salary increases as well as the maintenance reserve withdrawal, which is a one-time withdrawal from our maintenance reserve account for required maintenance throughout the district. Transportation will remain about level. This is due to a bus lease payment schedule and the payment completion of some of our buses. This budget includes salary increases and the purchase of 3 new school buses. Employee benefits contain the adjustments for medical, prescription, and dental health benefits, general liability insurance, workman's comp insurance, Social Security contribution, and the PERS employer pension contribution. The overall increase is based off of our projections from each of our providers. Tuition will increase as well. These are the funds used for students placed out of district, and this allocation is based on our current enrollment and projected enrollment based on student needs. Capital outlay funds are allocated for technology equipment to include server replacements, network infrastructure upgrades, and PA upgrades throughout the district. If additional capital projects are board approved in the future, the reserves will be withdrawn at that time. And to reiterate from the budget facts slide earlier, the special revenue is a projection made based off of the current grant allocation and the grants that we know that we're going to have next year. Debt service is our payment from the bond referendum, and this will decrease next year by $28,625, which brings us to a total balance budget of $70,336,000. Here's a chart of our appropriations, which shows the percentage breakdown of the expenditures we just talked about. Salaries and instruction make up the largest part of our expenditures at 38%, followed by employee benefits and support services. Here is a breakdown of how one tax dollar is spent. More than half, 56 cents, goes to salaries, instructions, co-curricular, athletics, and support services, while 15 cents goes to benefits. 10 cents goes to the operations and maintenance to keep our facilities updated. 6 cents goes to administration and technology, as well as another 6 cents goes to transportation. 3% goes to our debt service payment schedule. 3 cents goes to our tuition for out-of-district students, and 1 penny goes to capital outlay. This final slide shows a tax rate analysis. The proposed 24-25 budget contains an increase, as I said, of 2.48% on the tax levy. This top chart highlights the tax impact for the average assessed home. The average assessed value is $235,668, which is about $99 a year, which comes out to $8.25 a month. This concludes the budget presentation, and Mr. Capello's portion was much more exciting than mine. At this time, do any members of the board have any questions?
I just have one, just for clarification. You had said when you said where the money coming from, that the capital reserve doesn't have anything in it yet.
So that is that we're not currently, we have about $4 million in capital reserve. I can't allocate those funds to be used until we have a project number from the Department of Education. We plan to have the modular classrooms possibly be part of that. The plans have been submitted from our architect to the Department of Ed. Once we receive project numbers, a resolution will be presented to the board, and if the board pushes that forward, then we will remove those funds, which would then increase the budget by whatever the total dollar amount is that we withdraw.
So to summarize, the money is there, but we can't move forward with putting it into the projected budget for next year until those project numbers are approved by the Department of Education. So the conversations that take place in the Facilities Committee meetings and the Finance Committee meetings are still very much in the plans. There's just a couple mechanisms that need to happen before we can show that in a budget. So it would be inauthentic to vote on it before those projects are approved.
So essentially, the money's in a separate savings account.
Okay,
That
it's
way.
just not showing in the budget. right now.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any members of the public with a question? Any other board members' questions?
I had the same question, but then also the capital outlay later on where it goes. How does that affect? Because there's zero there for that, right?
So-
I understand it's there, but
Capital outlay is actually it's a term for our Fund 12 account. Fund 10 is general operating expenses and purchases from Fund 12. They do include capital reserve, but also any piece of equipment over $2,000 has to be allocated to the Fund 12 account. So it doesn't mean that it's coming from our capital reserve. It's general operating expense, but it's just allocated to capital because it's equipment.
okay. Cool, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you to the board for your continued support.
Thank you.
I had her question written down too. She took my question.
Okay, I would next move on to public comments, but seeing that we do not have members of the public present tonight, we will move on to Section 5, adoption of the 2024-2025 school budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. That the board approves the final budget adoption that was presented to the public during a hearing held at the Cinnaminson Middle School on April 25th, 2024. The total base budget, $70,336,270, with a local tax levy of $37,117,352, and debt service of $2,022,652. Thank you.
Mr. Kenny,
Oh, I'm sorry. Item B. Item number 1, that the board approves the tax levy cap adjustment of $118,330 based on enrollment increases. Item number 2, that the board approves the tax levy cap adjustment of $52,182 based on the healthcare cost increase. Item number 3, included in the budget line 630, budgeted withdrawal from maintenance reserve is $771,370 for required maintenance projects. Item number 4, that the board approves the resolution establishing the maximum budget amount for travel and related expenses for the 24-25 school year. And item number 5, that the board approves the travel and related expense reimbursement of school staff and Board of Education members for the 24-25 school year is attached. Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater.
thank you, Ms. Livingood. Mr. Kenny, can I have a motion to approve Section 5, adoption of the 2024-2025 school budget, items A and B?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Meeker?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 6, personnel. Mr. Capello?
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. 2 personnel items this evening, seeking the board under letter A to approve the resignation for purposes of retirement, staff number listed in the agenda. And under letter B, appointment, seeking the board to approve item number 1 as listed in the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Mr. Bromhall, can I have a motion to approve Section 6, items A and B?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Topps?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Moving on to Section 7, Business and Finance. Ms. Livingood?
Thank you. Under Section A, Operations, that the board approves the completed school bus emergency evacuation drills that took place between Monday, March 25th, 2024, and Wednesday, March 27th, 2024. And item B, Contracts, that the Board of Education is authorizing the execution and delivery of the grant agreement for the ROD grant for the boilers and domestic hot water heaters as attached, and that the board authorizes the delegation of authority to the school business administrator for supervision of the school facilities project. Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater.
Thank you, Ms. Livingood. Ms. Iacone, can I have a motion to approve Section 7, Business and Finance, items A and B?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Meeker?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. We have no executive session tonight, so with that, Mr. Evans, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Topps. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.